Well, hello, folks. My name's Craig T. Stewart, and I am your host. I am here with this guy over there. What's his name?
Jeff Mayhew.
Oh, you would think I would know that by now, but maybe the audience doesn't know. I don't know. Hey, Jeff. What's the what's the book for the month?
The Man in the High Castle.
So it's a medieval setting, and those are best for fantasy stories, right?
Yeah, there's lots of knights and lords and shepherds and stuff. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I believe all of that. Maybe we should, I don't know, do a synopsis before we dive into the questions on the book so folks know what's up.
The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick is an alternate history novel set in the 1960s. The Axis powers have won World War II, with Nazi Germany controlling the eastern United States, Imperial Japan ruling over the western United States, and a neutral no man's land in the Rockies. The story follows antique dealers Robert Children, Japanese official Tagami, Jewish craftsman Frank Fink, and Frank's ex-wife Juliana as their intertwining stories coalesce into a broader narrative.
A forbidden novel in the book called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, written by Hawthorne Ebenson, who is also known as The Man in the High Castle, imagines a fictional world where the Allies won. The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, although it is banned, circulates through the underground and influences the various characters in the book. As tensions rise between Germany and Japan, personal struggles of identity, authenticity, and morality unfold in each character's story. Juliana becomes entangled in the mystery around Ebenson and the book, and the I Ching guides many decisions throughout this novel, exploring themes of fate and perspective in a divided world which distorts boundaries between the alternate histories.
All right, what'd you think of the book?
What did I think of the book? It ends. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes on.
That was a really good response.
And then it ends.
That was a really good. That is like the perfect response for this book. There is a lot that goes on, and then it ends. And hey, look, that's intentional.
It is intentional.
I mean, that is absolutely intentional, and it's one of the things that is like both brilliant and disappointing about the book. I think it's brilliant in the way that it lays it out. It serves a purpose, but I think it's disappointing to a reader who just loves really good stories and wants to see some sort of like change or big natural conclusion of something more than what we get. But I think it's like it's a metaphor. I mean, the whole book is a metaphor for life. Is what is truth, what is reality, and I think you hit it on the head. Is like a lot goes on and then it ends.
Yep, that's very true. And like we just touched on it. The synopsis kind of mentions it, right? What are the main themes from the book? Reality versus illusion, and that comes up time and time again, especially with Tagami. The authenticity versus forgery plays a huge role, especially with the Japanese. And then fate versus free will in a general sense throughout the book. And that's kind of where the climax of the book comes, is like, is this fate? Is this free will? Is this fictitious? Is it real? And so those are the main themes. If anyone's seen the TV show, there's a lot of similarities, except for the part where the book ends and the TV show just keeps going for quite a bit longer.
Right.
All that's... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I find the book way better than the TV show because of the fact that it ends. I think that the TV show, although I did find the TV show incredibly interesting, but I think at some point the TV show just like goes off the rails.
Yeah, after like season 1.
You know, it's just it's too much. It loses the purpose. It like the purpose of the book is to have the reader ask these fundamental questions about what life is, what truth is, and the TV show doesn't do justice to that because it just keeps on telling you what's going to happen next. Yeah. It gives the reader what the reader really wants, which is like a continuous story to keep them entertained.
Well,
but it doesn't make them think
A
harder.
continuous story about things that feed into drama in real life.
Right.
Because yeah, why not? That's what's best for everything. That's what
Well,
all good TV shows do. They start incorporating more and more drama in the interpersonal lives of the characters instead of, developing the story or the world, and it totally goes well every single time. They never get canceled. I'm surprised I said that with a straight face. So, what did you think about the alternate world? The one that Juliana and Frank and company are in, and then their alternate world.
so like the alternate world of the setting of the Man in the High Castle, and then the alternate world and the Grasshopper.
Yes,
Yeah, because they're not the same. It's not the Grasshopper is not like the truth or like our
or
reality.
is
The
it?
but it's not because Britain, is the dominating force, not the United States. Churchill remains in power, um, which I found interesting for sure, um, although not realistic based on the circumstances. And you know, their alternate reality I found very interesting. Especially the part about the Germans going to space. I found that very realistic. Obviously, is
It was
I
their
don't know.
scientists that put us on the moon.
Right. It was von Braun, who the United States basically cut a deal to and brought to the United, and he was a big part of NASA. He's the one that developed the V2 rocket, which was instrumental in getting us to the moon. And to be fair, von Braun, although a lot of his technology was used for destruction on the German forces, he did want to go to space. That was like his purpose for designing these missiles. Um, and then I also thought it was interesting based on, like Japan is not the Japan force is not like what the Nazi force is. There's like some life to Japan, some, I don't know the right word for it right
Authenticity.
now. Authenticity. Yeah, there you go.
Even though they do copy a lot of the American culture in the Pacific.
Right. And with the Germans, it's very cold and like it's there's no heart to it. It's just it's cold technology. It reminds me a little bit of like our techno bros today. Like there's it, it's not asking the question of like what is right and what is wrong. It's saying I can do this thing, so I will do this thing. And they're going to space, they're going to the moon, they're going to Mars and all that stuff. Where Japan is kind of like they found themselves in a position where they're vulnerable, and now Germany is going to finish it off because like they wanted world domination, and they came to some sort of agreement where they divided up the United States and Japan was able to stay in power, but Germany's not satisfied with that. Clearly, and they're trying to, you know, change that now, years after the war ended.
Yeah. I I think the way the alternate world takes what is Nazi Germany, and how they kind of had to have that détente with Japan, and they focus on consolidating power a little bit. Um, I think that is somewhat realistic. I don't know where Hitler dies in this timeline. I think it's after the war, and they agree for ceasefire, which I don't know if would be true. I think that would be like the switch after the Nazis get the nuclear bomb first or the atomic bomb first. I think that would be a second change in the timeline that would really make a huge difference because Japan clearly doesn't have the technical prowess. Even was this book set in 1962, right? The 1960s. So they're set 20 years after the war, and Japan hasn't been close to catching up. They don't have injection molds. They don't really have plastics. They're just
They
focused.
don't
They're
have the hydrogen bomb.
yeah. To put this in civilization terms, Germany's autocracy. They're going for domination, as you pointed out. Japan's going for a cultural victory.
Hmm.
And it's a weird culture because on one hand they have that integration with people, but on the other hand they still have people with the pedal taxis, right? They almost have slave labor. And Germany, there's not really slave labor. That's just scientific pursuit. Granted, I think there is some African involvement with slave labor there with Germany, but it's such an interesting dichotomy between the two. Um,
Well, and they also commit genocide.
well,
So like,
yeah,
like so
but that was
there's
always
less
the point of
people to
Nazi Germany.
enslave. There's less people to enslave when you just burn them to
Or
death.
you try new weapons on large swaths of continents. That typically gets rid of a whole bunch of people too. Whoops. That, I mean, that's how the Germans looked at it, right? Um, all that said, I think the alternate reality in the grasshopper lies heavy is super interesting, and I totally need to know your thoughts on Churchill surviving 20 years long after the war and Tugwell's New Deal. Are these things that are good things, bad things? Are they even possible in our if we were to have it happen in our timeline?
I mean, I don't think that. I mean, Churchill lost power very shortly after the war, and I don't think that he. I guess like I think what I would need to know is what were the circumstances that led to Churchill being able to keep power? Like how because in our timeline, the United States was instrumental in winning the war. Okay, it was our manufacturing base. It was our ability to build ships and planes, and not just refill like our coffers in the United States with people and machinery, but also Britain and coming to the rescue of France. Um, and and then we got the bomb. Did they mention that did did Britain get the bomb in this
Uh, I
timeline? Does it
don't
mention? Did I miss
I
it?
don't
I
I
don't think
don't think
so.
they did, but I mean that would make sense if Britain got the bomb. Uh,
So I'm thinking if this is possible, here's how I think it plays out. Churchill, FDR, and Stalin had a relationship, right? They were always working together. FDR's dying. Now, it's famous that FDR never really told Vice President Truman about the atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project. He had no idea what it was. He learned about it when he got into office. In this alternate timeline, if Churchill's going to remain in power, FDR tells Churchill about this. Churchill somehow is able to take over the Manhattan Project. The scientists move to Britain. Britain gets the bomb. Britain's the one that's able to, end the war, and then Churchill's able to ride the coattails of that victory to staying in power,
and
driving
containing
the
keeping the
drive
empire going.
driving the conversation, and keeping the empire going. I I still just I can't fathom how it would have happened based on where we were in the world at that
Well,
point in time. But
and I don't know if it was brought up. Maybe I should have Googled some of this on the timeline. But did Tugwell like beat FDR and then so like FDR's not in the picture and Tugwell's not as much of a foreign policy guy, so Churchill was taking the lead in the war? Is that also a possibility that shifted focus back to Britain? Because FDR was definitely an autocrat in terms of power consolidation.
I mean, yes and no. I think FDR, like many people in tough circumstances, gets a bad rap for doing the things that need to be done to get to win. Um,
Nah,
and
decentralized. Don't consolidate.
it's a
Why
different conversation.
435?
Well, I
Same exact
guess
conversation, Jeff.
there I will leave this alone. There is a lot more that can go into that.
Yeah, this is about the book.
Okay, I know that's why I'm trying to stay on topic. I don't see if FDR loses power, I can't find a way how the Britain wins the war because if Tugwell, is not as supportive with the war as FDR is, if he's not able to get Congress to appropriate the funds, and somebody that's not mentioned, what about George Marshall? Does Tugwell come in and remove George Marshall because George Marshall was instrumental in getting the appropriations from Congress to pay for the shipbuilding, the plane building, to get the troops, um, you know, what do they call that when you're recruited for it? What are they? I'm
The
losing the
draft.
word. The draft, yes, drafting the troops, getting people on the ground. There's and you think like if this new person comes into power, he's going to change, and he has a different perspective of how the war should be played out. He's going to change that, and then I don't see how Britain is able to maintain. They were decimated. They were on their heels, and France is already gone. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know either. If only Philip K. Dick wrote more.
But and just to touch on that thing, see, the thing is with like the autocrat thing is like a lot of the stuff that people don't want to admit, a lot of stuff that FDR did was like it was voted on and passed by Congress.
After he
So
bullied them in the Supreme Court into doing what he wanted.
they pushed back on him and checked his
Initially.
power with the Supreme Court.
The Supreme
But
Court
they
decided to side with him because they didn't want to get packed.
I've always maintained the fact that the reason that the Union won the war over the South, and the reason that the United States won the war over the World War II is because a majority of the populace had bought into winning the war. They were willing to sacrifice and do what was necessary to win the war, and if that means approving power in different areas, sacrificing
To be clear, like actually fighting the war and then what you do outside of that are two very different things when it comes to the presidency. And I think before the war is where I have the biggest problem with FDR, with him consolidating power, wrongly so. Like during the war, I get that. Like I even concede with what's his name? Not Winston Churchill, our president during World War One. I'm blanking on his name.
Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson. That guy, the racist one, the racist historian president.
Yeah.
I didn't like the things he did, but also like how else do you win a war or get people aligned for war? Propaganda. Like this is a known thing. The Civil War, don't have a problem fighting the war. I have a problem with arresting a whole bunch of people and just like circumventing the law to do so. Right. And I mean, in this, we don't get any of that insight in this book. The closest we get is how the German factions, like the old party people versus the new people versus all these different factions within the Germans in this Man the High Castle book, there's constant power struggles between them. And that's what one of the parts of the climax is like, are we going to go to war with Japan? How's it going to happen? Is there a false flag? So on and so forth. And it's that there's two major factions that are being played off of each other by one man. It's like, what is not SSDD? It's same things, different reality.
Right.
Human nature doesn't change too much through everything, but we have a few more questions to go through. What was your who was your favorite character, Jeff? Is there a favorite character?
I don't know. Okay, so I mean, I guess Juliana. She's an interesting character, the way that she navigates these relationships. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do what she did and to believe, she had to trust in the Oracle, right? She's listening to the Oracle, the I Ching, kind of guiding her. It's it kind of like, you know, it's like submitting to truth, like believing that the truth that you see may not be the truth that is, and that maybe there's something more to the world, and she takes a big risk and she does something that's seems completely out of her nature, right? Of slashing this guy's throat, and killing him in cold blood. And even then she feels guilty and she's like, she kind of wants to help him, but then she just kind of forgets to help him, which I found like kind of interesting. And she decides not to go back. Like in my head, I'm thinking like, why are you even considering this? Like this was like, you need to do this to escape. This guy was like, he wasn't who he said he was. You had yourself in a bad situation, but and yeah, I my thought. Okay, so I'll be real with you just for a second, just guy on guy here. We're gonna cut this out of the podcast. Maybe, maybe not. Is they describe Juliana, and all I can think is like, that's a good looking woman right there.
Yeah.
they're very descriptive of like, especially like the at the end where they're talking about how like she forgot her bras and she started like talking
Mm.
about like all that stuff, and I'm just like, yeah,
Yeah.
Juliana seems like an attractive woman. No wonder.
So, as much flack as I want to give Philip K. Dick for not going further into the world building, he does a fantastic job of setting the tone for each character, like what their appearance is, how they speak. Like the Japanese have a very distinct style of speaking. The Germans have a very distinct style of speaking, especially in the audiobook. They do a great job of nailing all those things. But sometimes it goes a little overboard. And that's one of those examples with like Juliana where it's just a little bit too much, I think, for just a regular book.
I don't think it was too much. I thought it gave a full concept of who she
Yeah, it paints
was,
the picture.
and like it absolutely paints a picture. You get an idea, and I think, I don't know, like I think that sometimes, I don't know, the more you have, the less you're willing to risk sometimes. And if you have this idea that this woman is gorgeous and, she has more to risk than other people. Like if you're an attractive person, you got to head up in the world. People like attractive people, and you have more opportunities per se. There's I guess an argument that can be made of what is attractive and what isn't attractive, but I think there is a baseline of what most people find attractive, and she's got a leg up. And so knowing this about her then puts more emphasis on what she did that was so dangerous, you know? Um, but, and I agree. Philip, he does a great job of setting the tone for the characters.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite?
Tagomi.
Tagomi. I like Tagomi
Yeah.
too. I like Tagomi's storyline.
I like his storyline. His ending is, call it bittersweet in a way, is how
Yeah.
I would look at it. But I think his view on things is so interesting. And I do like that cultural victory idea, even though I play Civilization on domination because it's so much more fun. I don't have to think about it, right? But the cultural aspects of it and how he views the world, how he uses the I Ching, the situation that he's in with his higher ups, with Mr. Baines, with the potential for war. It is such an interesting storyline. And like, I would have been fine if the whole book was just that. But
yeah. Going back to the TV show, I think he was my favorite character in the TV show. I found him really,
yeah,
interesting, but also kind of charming in this like very subtle way.
yep.
And there's one part in the book, the part in the book where he like visits or he takes the jewelry, right? His can't speak this morning. You know what I'm trying to say.
Historicity.
Historicity.
It's a hard word to say.
Right. It's a hard word to say, right? I'm like, thank God I can just read in my head. And he like transforms or like he teleports or something into this alternate reality where the United States have won, right? And I found it interesting for a couple of reasons. One, he's called bad names in this place, right? Like it's not like they're not welcoming to him because he's different. And two, I thought it reminded me of the scene in the TV show. Now the scene in the TV show was a lot different. He's like visiting his family, I believe it was. But I don't know. It was just it was a good scene in the book. I thought it was very interesting. It brings a lot of depth to his character. And it again, it's constantly asking the question, is like, what is real and what isn't real? Is the history we're living in the history we're supposed to live in, or is it temporary? right? And I think that's ultimately like what the grasshopper is
Hmm.
doing is they're saying like, yes, the Germans and the Japanese won, but they weren't supposed to win. It was supposed to be the other side, and there's still hope for that to happen. History is temporary, and it continues to move forward, and you can write your own
Yep.
history if you have hope, right? And back to like what is right, what is wrong. The Germans are this non-morality type of culture. They're trying on world domination. I think if there was a continuation of the Man in the High Castle, I think the No Man Land might possibly team up with Japan to defeat Germany at some point in time, right? And
It
the United
absolutely
States might have
would.
a comeback,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Because yeah, it's like a melting pot of German and Japanese things going on there. But at the same time, they're very much more influenced by Japan. It's that cultural victory thing I keep bringing up. But I do like that you touched on the different layers and mirroring between the alternate realities and how it kind of sets that idea up. Like, is is the past truly set in stone? And if enough people want to change it, does it actually change reality itself?
Okay, so I got to come back to that because something you just said reminded me of a line of the book, and I want to bring it up real quick. It's the beginning of chapter 6. Okay, and you mentioned melting pot. All right, and it says it's talking about the different groups of people um, in New York with the Reich. And it says the Americans, on the other hand, they just looked like people. They could have been anybody. And, you talk about Japan and like the cultural war that they're like fighting and are, trying to maintain. Germany with their domination of like, this is the thing you're supposed to be and everything else is not supposed to be that way. And then you've got America that's like, everybody's welcome. We can all be more than we are. And that idea in this book has died, except that it kind of hasn't. It's still living underneath the surface. People all want to be more than they are. You look at the story of the jewelry, making the jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there is no market for this. This is something new and different, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like that American entrepreneurial spirit still lives within the society, even though the society doesn't really have freedom and power anymore.
Yep.
And so I think I just find it very interesting. And I think it's your point. And I think that's one of the strengths of the United States. I think that's part of the reason that it won. In every World War II movie that I've ever watched, there's always a moment where there's somebody from two different cultures fighting in a foxhole together that find common ground,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's a regular story plot. And because you're able to be like cooperative with people that have different viewpoints or different backgrounds to
Mm-hmm.
you, it makes you stronger, right? Because now you have more people on your side.
Yeah. There are no enemies in the same foxhole. That's totally what that saying is, right? It's probably just as true. Um, yeah. The You touched on the piece with the jewelry, right? And even like that the firearm that Tagomi has, which if I'm not mistaken is a fake, but he doesn't know it, and he kind of gives it a history. And he just because he believes it's there, it makes it become reality. And it's such an interesting idea because there's always myths around things like the Alamo. Like, what makes the Alamo so special? Is it like the 5 people or however many people were there and they're just like, no, we're not going to give up? Or is it the myth around how many people were actually there, how bad it was, and how many people they took out along the way uh, to defend their land? Right? Can can fiction be more real than facts in that
Mm,
sense?
wow, that's a really good question. And In a lot of ways, yes. Going back to the time period that you mentioned earlier with Wilson, even before that, think about the Spanish American War and the Maine, right? With this,
Remember the Maine?
you
It totally
remember
wasn't
the Maine.
faked.
It was just an
Yeah.
accident. It was just an accident that happened. I think what happened was the boiler basically exploded. But it took
It's a
the
great
thing is
excuse.
like the thing is the media can print whatever they want very quickly, and they have their own motives and
Hmm.
narratives, and it takes time to investigate something to find out the truth, right? And it's not necessarily like it was intentional of like, hey, we're gonna blow up our own ship and we're gonna
Yeah.
convince people that we're at war so they support the war. It was, hey, this thing happened. People actually believed that they were at war. It's not like they didn't. I mean, it was a very logical
Yeah.
conclusion to draw based on the circumstances, but at some point, somebody had to have figured out, hey, this might not be the case. But the story had grown so big and it had become a rallying cry for war. Remember the Maine,
Yeah.
right? That, yeah, the story became more important than the truth. And we ended up at war, and I think that, to your point of like, what is more important? I think the truth is more important, but sometimes the story carries more weight because people want to believe things.
Hmm.
They want to believe the things that they already believe. And if the story points them in that direction, they're likely to follow it.
And that's where conspiracies come into play. Because, like, if you already believe something, right? If you already believe that FDR knew what Japan was going to do at Pearl Harbor and did nothing about it, and believe that he did that on purpose to get us into war, then you're going to look for evidence to back that up. But, like, Occam's razor suggests even if FDR knew, he just didn't find it credible or didn't know what to do about it and sat on it.
Yeah, that's much more likely.
Much more likely. And that's me giving grace to someone who I actually don't like. So there you go. Um,
I mean, I don't like FDR. I don't think he was a very good human being as far as like in his personal relationships and the way he
oh
treated
yeah, that
his
too.
wife and everything else. But
That too. Um, I don't know how to bridge this one into the next question, but there's supposed to be a bridge. I knew it last night. I don't know it this
all
morning.
right.
Like how important is culture, society, etc., to an individual, and ultimately, how does one remain creative and genuine in relation to oneself and a culture? Because we see time and time again in this book where it's like it's a fake antique or it's an American antique and the Japanese are paying loads of money and some of them even kind of know like this isn't anything, this is fake, but
There
they buy
there's an
into it.
entire market. There's an entire market that creates fake
Yep.
relics to make them look fake or and old, and they buy it, and that's why I think they start with the building the jewelry is because 'cause they're afraid it's gonna get found out and the whole market's gonna collapse and they're not gonna have a business anymore. So they're trying,
The,
like, to diversify their business
as they
plan.
should, but in doing so they find something creative and genuine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think culture is important, but I don't think you can force culture on people that don't want it. I think that creating opportunities for people to have their own cultures, either from their past or building their new ones in spaces that allow that is probably the best way for it to flourish. Because I think what happens when you force culture on different groups that may not understand or believe in it is you get rebellion, you get pushback from it, and then ultimately there's always a point of culture where it doesn't accept somebody else's culture, and then you create real division with fighting and whatnot.
Which is
Um,
why the German part of America is kind of standoffish, even amongst themselves. Whereas the Japanese, even though there's a definite hierarchy there, that there's even like today, there's cultural appropriation that is positive. Like Japan buys into American culture and vice versa. Like we get anime, they get baseball,
Right.
and they love baseball in
Share
this alternate reality too, and football.
Well, and I think that's and then that's kind of to the point is like if you allow different groups to embrace their culture, then you can share it with each other. What you choose to share, what you choose, and then your culture grows at that point, and you build a bigger group.
And that also, I think there's also value where you can maintain a culture, uh, or at least keep culture from degrading. We see this today where, especially in like Japanese anime that takes place in America, they take some ideals as fact where maybe that was true 20 years ago, may not necessarily be true today. Like difference between 2026 and 2006 is massive. I mean, I was also like, second, third grade or however old I was, but even I know there's a huge difference in the last 20 years. And Japan still has this idea that may resonate with America in 2006, but today it may not. And it's that goes back to that myth, that idea that is something from our past that's probably genuine and authentic. We just don't believe in or do anymore. I'm having a hard time thinking of an example on my feet, but like baseball, I guess could be one example. Like Japan, they love baseball. They're continuing to do more with baseball. And America is like, yeah, we go because, everyone goes once. But does anyone actually like baseball outside of like the core people that play baseball in their family?
I mean, yeah, millions of people like
Okay,
baseball.
I'll take your
Yeah.
word for it. I'm not a sports
uh,
guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry for youth sports in America, and all those kids wanna go to baseball games, and they end up those people grow up, and some of them become professional baseball players, but many of them become coaches or business owners in their own,
But it's
communities.
commercialized. It's
Everything's
systemically
commercialized.
commercialized. Is it authentic? Is baseball today authentic?
Yeah, it's just different than it was. I think that you say that it's commercialized. It's like the reality is if you want to do what you want to do in your
Mhm.
life, you have to find a way to make money with it. And I think that's the creative part of what people specifically in baseball have done is they've created a market for themselves, right? Like there's money to be made. I mean, where I live in Northern Virginia, there's probably four like baseball facilities where they train kids to be better at baseball. They teach them. There's workout facilities that teach you batting cages, stuff like that. And then you pay for special coaches. You get on special travel teams. Like parents love it because the kids. Some of the kids love it. Although I would argue some of the kids are probably forced. Some of the kids love it because they're able to get really good at something, and they have expert coaching and teaching. The parents love it because it reminds them of their past. It gets their kids focused on something that's good or at least not bad in the world, keeps them out of trouble, teaches them valuable lessons that they wouldn't otherwise learn about teamwork and cooperation. And also, it becomes a socializing event, right? Like you're with other people that like the same thing that you like, and you build a community. You've built this community around baseball to keep your family and stuff safe and move you forward. It just happens.
Yeah. Uh,
You got to make money to do it.
but I also know you're biased. You're heavy into baseball. You like it. You used to be a pitcher, right?
Right, but I actually am, kind of against this culture a little bit in my community. I think that it's a little, you talk about commercialized. There's everything's good and bad. There's people that take advantage of
Yeah.
this, and they've lost sight. And I think that it hurts the overall love of baseball in the long term because what you do is you shrink the market to only people who have the money to afford to pay for these special coaches. And so a whole bunch of kids are left out because rec leagues don't really exist anymore.
Wouldn't that be
Um,
a degradation of authenticity? Because baseball's supposed to be about showing your talents. If you're just overtraining a whole group of people, it doesn't matter who's talented or not for the most part. someone like me that might be talented, but not like 100%, not like a Michael Jordan talented. Um, I'm not going to be able to compete if I don't have the money.
Right. And I think what it is just it's a moment in time where like it's gone one direction. I think that the market will correct itself. They'll understand what's happening, and eventually more influence will be given back to rec leagues to help open up. Because ultimately, they're going to run out of people to they're going to run out of clients because they've shrunk the market to only people that can buy. So the next generation, there's going to be less kids playing baseball. So, again, I think a lot of kind of like in this book is like, and I didn't mark it down, but there's a great line where it's like history's just a series of choices, right? Like that we make. And sometimes we make choices in the present, not understanding how they're going to affect our future.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that the people that made the choices were necessarily bad or intentional about those. They just might have been trying to solve the problem in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
not recognizing the problem they create in the future. And I think that's kind of the situation that this particular market is in right now. But let's get back to the
Yeah,
book.
well, yeah. And folks listening, if you have specific thoughts on baseball or other sports, let us know what you think in the comments below, especially if you disagree with Jeff since he's so passionate about it. But also if you agree, right? Is it still authentic? Is commercialization too much? Let us know in the comments. But yes, back to the book. What'd you think about the I Ching?
I mean, I found it interesting. As I mentioned earlier, it's kind of it's almost it's like religious
It's
in a
the
way.
oracle.
It's the oracle. It's believing in something without necessarily having proof that it's real. Um, and like I said, submission to what you believe as truth, right? Because Juliana, she's not sure. She thinks that this is the case with this guy, but the I Ching tells her to do the thing, right? And she's again back to the point. She wants to believe. I think she wants to believe this. She does believe it, but she's not sure. And when the I Ching reinforces what she already believes, she follows
Yeah.
through with it,
It
right?
It's kind of like going, evens odds I'm going to go get takeout tonight, and you roll a die, and you roll it 3 times because you want it to be evens because you actually want to go get food anyway. Not that I've ever done that in my entire life. Totally hasn't happened. But it's just like you're looking for that reinforcement, and if you get the answer you don't want, you're going to find a way. Like, oh no, it's best out of 3, not just one roll. Like it's not just that first line of the I Ching. What's that second line? Okay, does that Tagomi goes through this early on in the book, and he's like trying to suss out what the I Ching is saying, the Oracle is saying, and there's some of those lines. It's like that feels contradictory, but it's also vague enough. It's like a horoscope. It's vague enough where you can make it apply. And he like looks around the room, and then it like clicks what he needs. It's like, okay, all you had to do was sit there and think about it and look around your room. Yeah, didn't need to go to a book. Also, buy
I
my
find
book.
that well. I think that's interesting. Is sometimes the truth is you can solve your own problem if you just sit down and try to, right? Like and sometimes I think at least with, you know, faith is I think what God is doing is God is saying you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to understand that you are flawed and broken, but you're also made in my image and I live within you. And if you reach deep down inside, you can find me and help guide you where you need to go. And I think that the Oracle kind of represents that in this book of, you know,
The way,
it
the
like that
truth.
reveals itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So, would you agree with the statement that the characters that are obsessed over the I Ching, uh, they do find liberation in a way when they get answers from the Oracle?
Yeah.
And what about Juliana at the end? When the Oracle basically tells her that Hawthorne wrote the entire thing based off of the Oracle. So the Oracle wrote the alternate history.
Right. I thought so. I know we're gonna do standout lines, but this was my standout line. Can I do it
Go
right now?
for it.
Because you mentioned it. How strange, Juliana said. I never would have thought the truth would make you angry. Truth, she thought, as terrible as death, but harder to find. Um, yeah, I mean, I found that very interesting. I don't know exactly what to think about like Juliana's mindset here. You know, like I think she was probably like the reader thinking that she was going to discover this thing that was going to free her from the world that she was living in. Um and when she discovered that this guy didn't write it. There's no I think she probably perceives, him as some sort of leader that can, like, pull them out of wherever they are, and when she discovers that he's kind of just a front man for the Oracle, and you just kinda have to have faith and, like, believe, I think it sounds like she's a little disappointed, you know, which, back to the beginning of what you said, it's like a lot happens and then it ends,
Yep.
right? Which is what life is, and I think that Juliana is I don't again, if this continues on, I think this is like a moment where she like kind of falls into a lull. She's like questioning herself. She's questioning everything that she knows because that's the point, right? She's now questioning reality itself. What is truth? What isn't truth? And I think that ultimately she'll be pulled out of it. Ultimately, she'll follow through. She'll see that the Oracle guided her for a
Mhm.
purpose, for a reason. And I think that if the Germans were to overtake or be overtaken, I think she would be instrumental in the story of bringing people together to defeat them.
Are you sure you didn't write the next couple of seasons in the TV show? Because that a lot of that felt like that's what happened with the TV show. Although the TV show it wasn't a book, it was like a book and a movie, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a lot more magical aspects to it. But um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna go back and rewatch the TV show now, but yeah.
I don't know if I will. I think I'm going to finally watch Game of Thrones. I
Oh my
the
gosh, you've never watched Game of
Nope,
Thrones?
I haven't even read
Dude,
the
it
books.
is
I
I
actually
haven't
just
read the books either, but
uninstalled the book again because I've got too many other things I want to read that are more pertinent to uh, life.
you're gonna love Game of Thrones, the show. It's
So
fantastic.
I did
But continue.
watch the some of the prequel that's coming out right now. The prequel's actually really good. So maybe I can get into it. I don't know.
I don't know. The only thing with Game of Thrones is like the violence is just like, ugh. I don't like watching things get destroyed, and I have to cover my
Well,
eyes for a lot of the show. But
and
the story is
the
great.
story itself is great, and the issue I have with R.R. Martin mostly because like I haven't read Game of Thrones, but I know what happens throughout it. Um, I've not been averse to spoilers. He's like the opposite of Tolkien. Tolkien has this very real idea of good versus evil and how that plays out, and there has to be meaning to action, so on and so forth. In Martin's world with Game of Thrones, it's by the time you get to the end, did anything change? Or are people just evil? And you know this to be true because of what the authors say outside of the books, what Tolkien says and what Martin says. They actually disagree with each other. And Philip K.
Mm,
Dick comes in the middle here and he's just like, we'll have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's a lot more fair and balanced, as they say. But
hmm
yeah, I think I covered all the questions that I truly wanted to cover. There is uh, one thing I wanted to talk about before I go to my standout lines. It's on page 42 in this book, which I forget what chapter it is. And I'm just going to read the paragraph. And this is from the point of view, I think it's of Mr. Baines. They want to be the agents, not the victims of history. They identify with God's power and believe they are godlike. That is their basic madness. They are overcome by some archetype. Their egos have expanded psychotically so that they cannot tell where they begin and the Godhead leaves off. It is not hubris, not pride. It is inflation of the ego to its ultimate, confusion between him who worships and that which is worshipped. Man has not eaten God, God has eaten man. And then the next line here is also a pretty good one. What they do not comprehend is man's helplessness. And I just,
Hold on, we gotta go on just a little bit more. I am weak, small, of no consequence to the universe. It does not notice me. I live on unseen. But why is that bad? Isn't it better that way? Whom the gods notice, they destroy. Be small, and you will escape the jealousy of the great.
that's some Nietzsche stuff right there, I'm telling you.
Yeah. I had that whole section marked, even the paragraph before it.
Yeah,
Like that was like it was real. That's a really good part of the book. Um, yeah, it's really that's some good stuff right
yeah.
there.
I think it does a good job of summarizing where the worship of the individual and of a state, which happens in fascism, that cult of
Hmm.
personality, it's like, where does that go? What does that look like? And it becomes
Right.
this myth, this legend where man thinks they've become God, but in reality they haven't.
Right.
Um,
But, you're master of your domain. Well, I guess that has a bad connotation because it's a whole different thing that I forgot about. But when you're the master of the moment, um, but how long is that moment going to last? Because you're not really a god, and you've deluded yourself into believing you have all these powers. And I think that's tying it back to like towards the end of the book is that's kind of the point. This history is temporary. There are other possibilities that could have happened. It lends to that fact that there are alternate realities that exist outside of this reality, right? That's the whole thing with Tagomi is like he visited an reality because of the historicity piece that he had. But it also, even if it doesn't mean that, to the people that live in that moment, it means this history can be changed, right? And that's the question I think we all ask ourselves ever over is like, are we trapped in the moment that we've built for ourselves, or can we build new moments? And I think the answer is we can build new
yeah.
moments.
And I think that's why I like this book, because it brings up that exact point uh, directly and indirectly. And almost every single chapter, I think that it's brought up. Which, have you ever seen? It's on Hulu. The TV show. It's like a short series called Devs.
Mm-mm.
So it's about a tech company that they're the first ones to get quantum technology, essentially, and that they're the $10 trillion company. Like Nvidia, they're everyone hates them, but also they're in charge. Um, they go between the different quantum theories, and the main character, without giving too much of it away, basically wants to change the reality he lives in. He
Mm.
wants to use like Everett's many worlds theory. No, he doesn't want to use Everett's many worlds theory, but he wants to essentially rewrite things to bring his daughter back. And so
Mm.
there's a whole back and forth on that, and it comes up like, assume that the many worlds theory is true. Well, then Man in the High Castle is a possible reality that we could live in. And then the reality of the grasshopper lies heavy is also one, uh, even though it's storybooked in a story or in a different world already. And it brings this idea all the way back to, what's real, what's not, what's genuine, what's not. And it's what we make of it ultimately, and how we perceive it. And we could all be living in a different aspect, in a different way, and not even know it.
Yeah. All right.
Standout
So,
lines, or do you have something else?
I already read my standout line. That was my favorite standout line. Um, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so I had two that I wrote down. The first one comes very early in the book. It was on page 5 for me. Um, I actually don't remember off the top of my head who says it, but yes, these new young people of the rising generation who did not remember the days before the war or even the war itself, they were the hope of the world, which it's always that way, right? The future generation is the hope, so you have to do everything you can to help them succeed. But the second one, it's also fairly early on. It's on page 39. But that's the task of art, to advance the spirituality of man over the sensual. Your abstract art represented a period of spiritual decadence, of spiritual chaos, due to the disintegration of society, the old plutocracy.
All right, I have one that I can share here. I think that this is Tagomi, and I think is this the moment that he is getting ready to do his all right, all right, the line is, "When I was a child, I thought as a child, but now I have put away childish things. Now I must seek in other realms, I must keep after this object in new ways." Um, when I was a child, I thought as a child, but now I have put away childish things. What do you think that means there? I've put away childish things I thought as a child, but now I've put away childish things.
You stopped believing in the best of the world of other people. That's the way I've always taken it to mean. Like, and you can
Mm.
look at it from a Christian aspect. What does Jesus ask you to do? It's to have childlike faith.
But this is the moment right before he held the jewelry in his hands and sees the other reality, I believe.
Yeah.
And, the next paragraph, "I must be scientific, exhausted by logic analysis, every entree systematically in classical Aristotelian laboratory manner." What are you laughing at?
Is this a philosophical book with big words or what?
Well, but Aristotelian, like, tying to that is like, I mean, there is, Aristotle believed that man were political animals, right? But I believe that he thinks that there is good in the nature of man as well. And, I think that putting away childish things is not to believe that the world is bad, but that good might be harder to bring to the top than it is
Yeah.
bad.
Your
And
morality changes as you put away the childish things.
right, because you recognize that the world itself, separate from people, is unforgiving to you. Gravity will kill you if you jump off a cliff, right?
Hmm.
Sharp things will stab you, right? Like there are things outside of your control that you have to protect against. And I think in this moment, but now I have put away childish things. Now I must seek in other realms. And he then holds the piece of jewelry and he sees the alternate reality. You know, it's not to not believe in good. I think it's to recognize what is real and what isn't, between the good and the bad, recognizing that it's a lot harder to distinguish than maybe a child would perceive. Because as a child, you're just like, that's bad, that's good. Like something good happens, it's good. Something bad happens, it's bad. But it's like, as you get older, it becomes more complicated than that.
Yeah. And there's trying to tie this into Pink Floyd because, why not? Sid Barrett, the original lead guitarist and singer of Pink Floyd, a lot of his music with Pink Floyd and afterwards, his solo work, is best described as childlike because he just cuts through all the nonsense in a way. And while cryptic, he's got songs like Bike, where it's like, I have a bike, you can ride it if you like. It's got a bell that rings, all these things that make it look good. Like, come on over, let's have some fun. And it's such a lighthearted take. But then it doesn't take into account, like, look out for the cars that are driving by. It doesn't take out to look out for the kidnapper or anything like that. It's just focused on one thing, and that's having fun with this object, this bike. Let's play together, right? And all of his songs are like that, except for the ones where he's talking about his mental health. It goes down very quickly.
Mhm.
But even in those, like, there's this childlike aspect, which is hard to comprehend the older you get. And I'm finding that myself, over the last 10 years, it's much harder for me to understand where he's coming from because he spoke like a child, but his words hit deeper than just like a child's shallow understanding of something. And I think that goes into, like, with Christianity, where your faith needs to be childlike. You need to have that wonderment, that amazement of the things that happen. Like, that's a miracle. Understand that's a
Mhm.
miracle. Praise God for that miracle. Um,
Mhm.
and the same thing applies in this book as well, because as we alluded to, like, the I Ching, the Oracle is effectively the what would be God, right? It's the driving force. And if you have that childlike wonderment, you will be rewarded. Togami gets to see what's on the other side.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so what's the book for next month, Craig?
Oh, I have no idea. It's probably a philosophy book or something similar.
It's Mere
Mere
Christianity
Christianity.
by C.S. Lewis.
By the way, my mother said she is not reading that again.
Ah, rude.
It took her a year to read it the first time.
It's like 100 pages.
I know.
Did she not like it? I mean, I haven't read it, so but
It's just not her thing.
really? Hmm. Well, now I'm really interested in reading it.
I I when I read it, it was back in 2022. And it was only in audiobook form, and I thought it was kind of stupid, but by the end of it, it's like, okay, I get it. C.S. Lewis has a lot more to say than I thought he did. Narnia's not his best work. And like, that was a change for me. So hopefully it'll be a change for those readers out there who haven't read it. You can pick it up. It might take you a little bit longer, even though it's a short book, but I think it's worth it.
Well, that's all we have for now, folks. Let us know in the comments what stuck out to you most. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And for those tuning in on Spotify and Substack, please like and share.
For those on YouTube, kindly give us a thumbs up.
And you can check out the Substack version of this podcast for older episodes and future books we're looking at reading together. And you can find all links for What the Book at craigtstewart.com. With all that said, have a good one, folks.
Peace and love. Well, that's all we have for now, folks. Let us know in the comments what stuck out to you most. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And for those tuning in on Spotify and Substack, please like and share.
For those on YouTube, kindly give us a thumbs up.
And you can check out the Substack version of this podcast for older episodes and future books we're looking at reading together. And you can find all links for What the Book at craigtstewart.com. With all that said, have a good one, folks.
Peace and love.